Today we're going to take a look at inventory transactions. And here we are in our sample company, Bellwether Garden Supply. We have a navigation window called Inventory and Services. And here, when we click on this, we're going to go through these various buttons as far as Accounting 240 class requires. The Inventory Items button is where you can view and edit the inventory that you've already set up. You can look at what you sold to each different customer, so you can see how that goes up. And there's, of course, a variety of reports that are on the Reports button. But here we can also set up a new inventory item. Company Services is something that you can set up for as an inventory item. So inventory items themselves can be products that you offer or services. And here is where you can set up services as being an inventory item. That way you can say, well, this type of service, say if you do tax returns, your business does tax returns as a service. And so you can say, well, for each 1040 tax form, we're going to charge this flat fee. And if we have to itemize deductions and use Schedule A, well, we're going to charge this other fee. And so you can set up each of those services as being like an inventory item, so that they'll print out on invoices and things, and you won't have to put a number in each and every time. So you can choose to do that. Assemblies button is if you are making something. You're manufacturing a product from raw materials. And so this Assemblies button lets you say, well, okay, I use so much of this and so much of this and so much of this other thing, and together then they make my product that I'm going to sell. And so you can use that button. Sage is not truly made for a large manufacturing company. They're made for small to medium-sized companies, and with manufacturing, this is helpful for a small bit of manufacturing. If you have a major manufacturing industry, you probably should have different software that's more made for your particular industry. Okay, here is a price button where you can go through and do different types of price-related adjustments. And we will not be using the Company Services, the Assemblies, or the Prices button. We will be using this Inventory Items button. And you can put in Company Services as inventory items within this Inventory Items button. You don't have to use the Company Services button to put them in. Alright, here we have a Purchase Order button. So if we want to order some inventory from a supplier, we can press this button. This button is exactly the same as the Purchase Order button on the vendor window that we have already discussed. So I will not go further into that. It is exactly the same. The Receive Inventory button is exactly the same as the Enter Bill button that we also discussed at Vendors and Purchases window. It has a different name, Receive Inventory, as opposed to Enter Bill, but it is exactly the same window that will open up if you go into New Inventory. This just gives you two different places, and most of Sage has this type of thing where there's many different ways to get to where you want, not just one single way. So this is just another way if you're receiving inventory that's been shipped to you and you're getting the bill at the same time, you can go into Enter Bill or you can go into Receive Inventory. This inventory count button is for when you're ready to do an exact physical count of the inventory. GAAP requires us to do a physical count of the inventory at least once per year, even if you're on the perpetual inventory system. And that once per year is going to be at the end of the fiscal year, whenever that is. If you are on the periodic system, you need to do a physical count of inventory every single accounting period to be able to calculate out your cost of goods sold. You may want to do a physical count of inventory more often than what you are required to do. This report, when you click on this button, shows all the inventory and what location in the store, if you've already set up what location in the store it is, and then and what the item is. And then the stock people, the employees, would go through and actually physically count, and they would put how many of each of these things is on that one line that says count, and then they would initial off that they had counted that themselves. Then you can compare that to the reports of everything that we have in Sage and see if our physical count, where it differs from our actual count, from our bookkeeping count. This inventory adjustments button is used when we've done the physical count, or we know that there is something physical that's different from the bookkeeping. Let's say that some inventory is hanging on the hanger out on the store floor and it gets ruined somehow. Somebody drops some berry juice on the sweater and it ruins the sweater. So we cannot have it hanging on there for sale for anybody anymore. So here's where is a way that we can take that out of the books just as well as we take it off the hanger and we have to either discard it or do something with it. And so that we also need to take it off the books. Maybe it gets stolen and we find out about it. Maybe something happens where we want to match reality with the books. We can use this inventory adjustment, adjust the books so that they will match reality. Reports are for the inventory related reports, and as usual we can access those reports various other ways as well. And we'll take a look at one of the reports that you'll need to do for the project. So let's take a look at inventory items. Okay, if I go into new inventory item, I have to give the item an ID. Now with Bellwether Garden Supply, just like for customers and vendors, has an item ID that's all capitals. So if I have they use AVRY for bird related things, then a dash, and then a number. So if I use 10060, that's a prefabricated birdhouse. Okay. Then you have to say what type of item, and there's a variety of types of items. And most of our products are going to be something that we carry in stock. Okay? There might be some things that are not stock items that we can carry. Description only means like if we're going to do a special job for somebody that is not something that's normally offered, or it's some kind of custom thing, where we're not going to set it up as an inventory service or an inventory product, then we can just say what it is on the invoice to the customer without having it set up in inventory. Service that we want to set up as an inventory type service. Labor is for manufacturing. Assembly is for manufacturing. And activity and charge items are for when we want to charge these to a particular job, and we will talk about that later in the semester. So right now, the main one you need to worry about is a stock item, but if we offer a service item, we might also use that, and we might also use the description only. So we're going to call this a stock item. Then there's a description, and we can make two descriptions. One for sales. This is the description that's going to go on the sales invoice to the customer. And so we want to word this however we need to. We want the customer to be able to see however this is worded. That's how we want to put it in. Okay? For purchases, this is just for our own benefit. We're the only one that's going to see this. And so, however, if we do purchase orders, it's going to show up however we type it in. When we punch in that we want to order this or that, then it's going to come up just like this. If you're never doing purchase orders, then we will be the only ones to see this. Okay? Now there's a price level. When I click on the arrow, it shows you that there's 10 price levels that you can choose, that you can make. So typically price level 1 is your main price level, that what it is that you're going to charge the customer. Not what it costs us, but what price always refers to what you're going to charge the customer. And what are you going to charge the main customer for this? So if we're going to charge $39.99 to the main customer. Now maybe on you will need a second price level, because there's like every year right before the spring, when it's the most popular time for people to be thinking about buying birdhouses, you have a big birdhouse sale and bird feed sale, etc. And so maybe you have a 20% off sale. So you want to use price level 2 for that 20% off. So it would be $31.99. If we sell birdhouses to a wholesaler at some cheaper price, we could put that in as level 3. So we have 10 different price levels that we can use, and we can also put in calculations. So if I put in a calculation for price level 2, that it is X percentage off of whatever price level 1 is. That way, if the price goes up on level 1 to $41.59, and I put that in, then price level 2, if there's a calculation for it, will automatically calculate and change. Otherwise, right now, if I change price level 1, price level 2 is still going to have $31.99 because there's no calculation here. This arrow here allows you to put in a calculation. We will not need that for our projects, but we do need for your project 4/5, you do need to be able to put in 2 different price levels. Okay? This last unit cost says how much did we last pay for this thing if we ever bought one. Now once we buy them the first time after we set this inventory up and we buy some of it, then it'll keep track of the last cost. But if we had purchased this before we had set it up, and we could say, well, how much did it cost us? Okay. The cost method you can see here is FIFO. We have the choice of FIFO, LIFO, or average cost, and we'll just keep it with FIFO. The UPC, SKU, this is the barcode that would be associated with this. And so you can punch in the barcode, and that way if somebody is up at the cash register and it doesn't scan for whatever reason and the cashier needs to punch in the barcode numbers into the cash register, well, Sage here already has that in there, and so it would recognize it and would know how much to charge on the cash register for this birdhouse. We do not need that for our project. The item type, these are special types of items that Bellwether Garden Supply uses. We do not need that. Location is what aisle in the store is this. So if a customer calls me, I can look and asks me about these birdhouses, I can look it up on my computer and say, oh yes, those are in aisle 4, you know, so that when the customer gets here, they know exactly where to go. Okay, we do not need this for our projects. Stocking unit of measure, this says, does this thing come as a single thing by itself, in which case you would choose the 1, or does it come in a bag, a bottle, a package of some kind, a pair, or whatever like that. And so you would put that in there. The weight is important if you are shipping items out, because you're going to need, if you're going to ship it via UPS or FedEx or something, you need to know how much this weighs. And so you can punch this weight in, and then you can even, Sage can even do calculations as to how much is it going to cost to ship this thing to the customer. Okay, over here are our sales account, inventory account, and cost of sales account. These can be altered. These are the defaults that we set up when we set up the inventory defaults, and I will show you those in a separate YouTube video. When we set up those defaults, they come through here, but I can change those, any of these that I want to, into a different account. These are defaults for when I set up inventory. It's going to, if I sell this inventory, these birdhouses, it's going to credit the sales account as $40,000, which is sales. If I purchase this inventory, it's going to debit the inventory account, which is $12,000. If I sell the inventory, since this is a perpetual inventory system, there's always a second journal entry after the sales entry in which I need to debit cost of goods sold and credit inventory. This is my cost of goods sold account, number 50,000. This item tax type says, should this item be, should we charge sales tax on this item? And you can see that we have a regular, which means yes, we're going to charge sales tax, or an exempt, which means no, we're not going to charge sales tax. Now, typically services do not have sales tax, and products do, especially if we're selling the product to a regular retail customer. So if we were selling this product only to other organizations that were then going to resell it, then we would put this in as an exempt. Or if this was a service that didn't have to have sales tax, we would put it in as exempt. but this is something we are stocking on our shelves and selling it to regular customers. So we're going to leave that as a 1. Okay? This minimum stock here tells me how many of these items do I want to make sure that I have in stock at all times as a minimum. So if I want to say that I want 3 of these to be in stock, and once I get down to 3, is there a certain amount that I want to automatically reorder? So yes, I'm going to order 6 of them. Whenever I get down to 3, the Sage is going to remind me, hey, you're down to only having 3 left. You need to reorder another 6. This says, who is the best vendor for these types of birdhouses? And if I have a particular vendor, I could, this will bring up all my vendors, and I could put in that's the particular vendor that I want to use when I order these birdhouses. You can leave that blank if there's not a particular vendor. And this is a buyer ID, which again, we don't need. All right, we'll talk about beginning balances in a separate YouTube. Custom fields. These are fields that Bellwether Garden Supply set up for things that they wanted to know, and so they set this up. We do not need those for our project, but just know that there are 5 different things that we can set up to know about inventory that will prompt people to ask those questions or whatever. Here is the history of these units. Of course, we haven't bought or sold any of them, so there's nothing showing on here. But once we buy and sell these, it'll show month by month how many units we bought, which will be under the units received, and how much we had to pay for it, which is our cost, how many units we sold to customers, and what we sold them for, which is our sales. The bill of materials and the item attributes are grayed out because these things relate to things that are part of manufacturing things. And since this was a stock retail item, we do not need those tabs, and so they're grayed out and we can't get to them.